live the life you love.
Yeah, excited to talk to you. So you have a new book out, Don't Get Screwed, How to Protect Yourself as an Independent Musician. So I guess first question is why this book and why now?
Yeah, so there is just so much misinformation online and that roams around the music community. And I really just wanted to give people the straight to the point primer. This is what you need to know, in sort of like a handbook format that you can just always reference, always have with you. And that was my intention, and that's been how it's being received, which has been great. And also, a lot of the books that are out there already they're much longer. They're a little more of a textbook format, and not everyone has the time or inclination to want to read a several hundred page book of a lot of different intricacies. So again, that was going with that short to the point primer reference guide. Here's what you need to know. And so I really saw that there was this kind of gap in the information available in that kind of format, and I wanted to make that available and be a resource for independent musicians.
I love that because I don't know which books you're referring to, but the book I hear get recommended the most, and it's an amazing book. All You Need to Know About the Music Business
Yeah, that is
by Tom
a
Passman.
fantastic book.
But
Everybody uses that book.
yeah, it's definitely a great read. But I wonder sometimes it's like a thing where it's normal to recommend it, but I wonder how many people that recommend it have actually read the entire thing, because it is very, very technical, deep, and dense. So it's nice to have something like this out there that you're putting out. That's more of a quick guide that you can take with you and reference to on a consistent basis. I love that. What's some of the most common I guess before I get into mistakes, what are the most common bad advice that you see out there, like that motivate you to write this book? Because you mentioned that you see a lot of misinformation out there online.
Mm-hmm. So some of them are those ones that, you hear about, like, oh, you can use 3 seconds of, somebody else's song, or, so many notes or chords or something. That's all misinformation. But something that I see so much being a lawyer is that people don't understand the value of registering your work for copyright. And there's a whole lot of like, well, if I mail it to myself, then that counts instead of registering with the Copyright Office, or if I post it online. And actually now I've been seeing a lot of websites pop up where they offer some sort of alternate registration where they give you a timestamp. But it doesn't hold any weight if there's actually some sort of infringement or issue with ownership of your work. And the really only definitive way to be able to sue to protect your work, if you need to, is by registering with the U.S. Copyright Office. And I just, wanted to explain why this is so important, but people also don't always understand what it means to own a copyright, what rights you have when you do own a copyright. And so I really wanted to break that down for people. And I should say too, just in the course of this conversation, because I'm an attorney, I have to give a disclaimer that nothing I say here is legal advice or creates an attorney-client relationship. It's just for informational purposes. Anything considered an advertisement is general in nature, not towards any specific person. So if you have questions, seek an attorney in your state, in your jurisdiction, because sometimes laws vary as well, depending on where in the world you are listening to this. So
yes, thanks for adding that. I should have done that too. This is purely educational, and I'll make sure I add an intro as well. Yes, and then anyone, this is a great resource to learn, and we're lucky to have Erin here to share some information. But definitely seek out an attorney if you have any potentially legal issues, or as a previous attorney had said, whenever there's anything that has words that you need to sign, you should talk to an attorney.
Yeah, or even if you have questions, I have people just hire me for a consultation because they want to know more about copywriting their work, or
Mhm.
royalties, or what should be their next best steps based on what they're trying to do in their career or something like that. So even, yeah, if there's anytime anything that you don't understand, a document is presented to you, or you just want advice about how to legally protect yourself and make sure you're doing what you need to do. I mean, those are all good reasons to start with an attorney.
Absolutely. And I'm going to add a link to the show notes to a copyright masterclass I've done, but it was a little while ago. So I guess as a quick reference, I know in today's world, a lot of artists are just releasing singles.
Mhm.
And from what I remember, when you release singles and you're not really doing an album or an EP, is it still a case that you can, for the copyright office, you can register a collection of songs? So it could be the works of Aaron Jacobson. Here's 10 songs. They're not necessarily all on an album, but they're all going to be individual singles. Is that still the case,
It
or how does that work?
depends on what you're doing. So I always take those on a case by case basis, because there's no just, okay, here's the answer.
Yeah.
But because the Copyright Office it used to be really easy to register group registration. Then they were getting more specific with how it needed to be registered, and they weren't always accepting group registrations.
Right.
Now they're actually, I don't think it's rolled out yet, but they are going to be rolling out something. This came out on, I mean, I think this is public to say because I got like a news bulletin. It's on their website.
Brand new
So,
information.
but they are going to be rolling out another option for group album registration. So, more to come on that, but
Okay.
it will be, that will be helpful for a lot of people, because I know especially people that, are putting out a lot of music. It definitely helps with fees, because
Mhm.
it's, Copyright Office applications are $45 to $65 per application at the time that we're talking about this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely helps when you can group stuff, especially if you're releasing or needing to copyright a lot of works.
Mhm. What's the best resource to get the most current and newest information on regards to copyright? Does the Copyright Office have like a newsletter? Where can artists?
Yeah, they do. And they have, I mean, they always post stuff on their website. It is, because it's from the Copyright Office, is a little more technical.
Mhm.
But I mean, they're going to be the ones releasing the information about
Right.
what they're doing. And then anywhere else you see it is just somebody picking up that information from the Copyright Office. So, yeah, they definitely, I mean, they're good, and they're definitely trying to modernize everything, get a lot more options online
Mhm.
for things that you can do. So I know that they're really working on all that, and they're doing a good job. It's a very large undertaking, I
Yeah.
think. So,
So yeah, so much intellectual property out there these days
mhm.
with all that
Yeah.
content and everything. We asked what's the most common misinformation you see online. What's the most common mistake that you see independent musicians make?
Usually the biggest mistake is not having agreements with the people that you work with.
Mhm.
Usually that's people that are co-writing with each other, and they don't do a songwriter split agreement, and then
Mhm.
later there's some sort of dispute about who wrote what percent of the song, or how the composition can be used, and things like that. So that's that, and not properly registering for royalty collection would be the two biggest mistakes, because there are so many people that are not registered with a performance rights organization,
Mhm.
or maybe they are, but they're not registered, because there's multiple ways you need to register, and
Mhm.
so they might not be registered in all the ways that you need to be registered,
Mhm.
or they think that a performance rights organization is their publisher, and like that's all they need to do, because they're getting some checks maybe, so they think, okay, that's all my royalties. But a performance rights organization only collects and pays out one type of royalty. So if you're just focusing on your performance rights organization, you're missing out on other royalty streams that are available.
Mhm. What else should artists register for? I know there's the PRO, Sound Exchange, and then A question I had actually towards the end might be a great segue for it now, but I know this year the MLC just rolled out as well. So I guess are those places artists should sign up for as well? And is there anything else to where artists can make sure they're collecting all their royalties?
Yeah, so in the US, Harry Fox is the main kind of collection for mechanical royalties. And now the MLC is also stepping in for those digital mechanical royalties as well. So yeah, exactly what you named, the PROs, which in the US is ASCAP and BMI would be the two most known ones because they're open for anyone to join, but there's also CSAC and GMR. But yeah, and then Sound Exchange, like you said, Harry Fox, the MLC, if you're big enough to have YouTube ad revenue, if you have enough subscribers and views on your channel, register for that because that's an extra revenue stream. So yeah, there's all these different ones that if someone's just like, okay, well, I did my writer registration on ASCAP or BMI, you're then missing out on all these other streams.
So I know GMR is fairly new. I know ASCAP BMI is pretty much anybody can go on their sites and sign up. CSAC's invite only. And a question I've actually never gotten an answer before, but GMR, can artists sign up for GMR? I know it's Irvin Azov's organization, or is it strictly artists that he works with?
I think that's really more for I can't speak for him, obviously, but I think that's more for, higher level artists that he works with or writers that he works with. So it's not that anyone can just go and sign up for that. I mean, I'm sure if there was some connection and he, wanted to bring you on board, then that would, then that would work. But it's, ASCAP and BMI, anybody can just go on their websites and fill out the applications and sign up. And then, as you said, CSAC is invitation only. And CSAC and GMR are private for-profit companies, whereas ASCAP and BMI are nonprofit companies.
So before we're going to talk publishing deals today, before we dive in, I want to go a little bit through your background. So I noticed on your LinkedIn during college, you've had a lot of really cool things that you worked in, a lot of different opportunities. I think you worked in radio and promotions. But why did you decide to go into entertainment law?
So originally, I was not planning to go into entertainment law or the music industry or anything like that, because I had just always loved music, but I never knew what there was to do in music besides be a performing musician. I didn't know anything about the business side. So for me, it was like, well, I'm not a performing musician, so that's not going to happen. Right. And then when I was in college, I took an introduction to the music industry class, and that's when they explained managers and agents and copyrights and contracts, and we read All You Need to Know About the Music Business. And it was like this whole world opened up, because I was like, oh, I really find these copyrights and these contracts interesting, and I understand them. And I just started hearing all the stories about musicians signing these bad deals and getting screwed over by these big companies. And I thought, wow, okay, so this is a real job. I could be a lawyer and represent musicians and keep them from getting screwed in these deals. And I went, okay, great. That's what I'm going to do. So, so that I made that decision. And then I just started taking a whole bunch of classes in music industry and got involved with our campus radio station. I went to USC for my undergrad, so I was a DJ at our campus radio station. I would promote concerts on campus, and then I would tie that into my radio show and have all these bands on my show. And then after graduation, I actually did have a podcast for a while as well for independent musicians. And then law school got too busy. So
sure did.
had to focus on that. But yeah, so I went to law school with the intention to be a music lawyer, and, took more classes in law school, did more internships, and, started working at firms and whatnot. And then graduated past the bar, opened my own practice, and I've been doing that ever since.
That's awesome. Such a cool journey. I guess for those that are well, before I get there, I'm kind of jumping around today. I had a lot of coffee this morning. What was your original path? So, because I originally wanted to be a doctor. I was going for med school. I was literally studying for the MCAT. Same?
Yeah, I was
What was it?
pre-med before.
You're pre-med? How far did you get?
I got to like second year of college and just really was not enjoying organic chemistry like so many people, right? And just thinking also about that I mean, even though being a lawyer is still a lot of school, med school is even more school, especially when you're back on residency and all that. And it just was not as appealing to me as it was when I was younger. And then I took this music industry class, and it just like, it was just so awesome. So I was like, I'm going to do that. So
this will make some of the other pre-meds or former pre-meds mad, but I crushed and aced organic chemistry. For me, the killer was
for you.
for me, the killer was biochemistry. Once I got into that, I was like, whoo, forget about it. It's like another world.
Yeah, it's tough stuff, but I mean, I'm still interested in that. I read health stuff and research things and everything. So it's not like I don't use any of that information at all ever, but yeah, it wasn't what I wanted to spend all day every day doing.
Yeah, I will never touch a chemistry book ever again.
Yeah.
Except for my kid, I hope he doesn't go. But anyway, for those that are aspiring entertainment attorneys, I definitely have students that want to become entertainment attorneys and are really curious about that career. And I know there's many different paths to get there, but can you kind of share your journey to getting into law school, the LSAT process, and then how does someone open their own firm to become an entertainment attorney, and then how do you find clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, the LSAT process, it's not really fun. You just really have to find the right course and materials and study and understand the strategy of how to answer the questions. So that was, probably, it's sort of like having to study for the SATs or, certain exams like that. So that was really just having to study and take the exam and then applied. I knew I wanted to stay in Los Angeles, so I applied to several different schools, but I really liked Southwestern, which is where I went, and I got in there, so went there. But I had really been interested in them to begin with because they have an entertainment law program. So I felt like I would be able to take these classes and get training and opportunities that I may not have been able to get at other law schools that didn't offer those courses. And so then when I started law school, I mean, I had done a few music related internships in college as well. But then when I got to law school, since I knew that I wanted to do music law, the first semester we were not allowed to have any elective courses, but then the second semester we were allowed to have one elective course. So copyright was my class, and I had already met the copyright professor going into the school because, I wanted to be able to make those connections with the professors whose classes I wanted to take. And started with copyright my first year. I think it was that summer I was a research assistant to my copyright professor, and then I took the music publishing law course. And then every semester I was just taking more music or entertainment law classes. And I did one internship at a publishing company. And then the way that my school did, I think it depends on the school, but at my school, you were only allowed to intern at a company. You couldn't do an internship at a firm, but they had something called a practicum that you could be invited to. so then later I got a call and from my professor who said, "Do you want to do a practicum at this boutique music firm?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And so I interviewed, and they hired me for this semester. So I was always doing something to get more experience and meet people in the industry. And I was president of our Entertainment and Sports Law Society, and booking panels and having attorneys come speak to our club. And I was the student liaison to the entertainment section of the American Bar Association. And so I was really doing everything I could to meet people in the industry, especially other entertainment lawyers, learn more, that kind of stuff.
Awesome. And then how did that lead to you opening your own firm? Did you work for another firm there first? And
I didn't. So I had done all these, different internships and whatnot in school. And then I graduated in 2009. And that was right in the economic downturn. So actually firms weren't even really hiring. And I did interview with a few places that really wasn't the right fit, because I was getting clients. Because as soon as I had passed the bar and I had let people know that I was now allowed to practice law, I was getting clients and referrals from people that I knew, and other people in the industry. And so I'd interviewed a few places, but they were sort of just more interested in like taking my client rather than like really wanting to help me grow as an attorney. And so I was sort of like, well, I'll see how this solo practice thing goes. And, I can always keep interviewing if I want to. But then I was getting more clients and I was growing my business, and I found that I was really enjoying it. And I was getting to interact with clients, which you don't really get to do as a first year associate. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to do my own practice. And I've been doing that ever since. And, just growing it. I mean, it's been like 11 years now. So
it's awesome. And now you're writing a book on how to do it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
How artists protect themselves. I love it. How do you find clients when you're starting out all on your own? Like, what's that process look like?
So the fact that I had met so many people while I was in school, that really helped for me to be able to get referrals when I was a young new attorney, because it is hard to get clients when you're a brand new attorney, especially if you don't know people. So I just think that everything that I had done, and as involved as I was, that had set me up to be able to actually, really do this and be successful. Whereas if I hadn't done as much as I did, and I didn't know people, and I think that probably wouldn't have happened then. I mean, there was a bunch of people in my class that were all kind of solo for a little bit, just because of the economic time, but then they all ended up getting jobs, or some of them aren't even doing entertainment law anymore. And I'm the only one that's still doing the solo practice. So, but for me, I like it because also it's, it's an entrepreneurial thing. And I like the whole running of the business and growing of the business aspect, in addition to being the lawyer. And I relate to my clients as well, because, for people that are an artist, or, starting their own label or publishing company or whatever it is, like they're entrepreneurs too. So, and even as an artist, you're still a business when you're an artist. So I can also relate to my clients on that level as well.
I have a tagline or a slogan for the show and for my classes. And what I love is that your journey kind of makes that slogan so true. And I kind of stopped using it during COVID because there's no shows. And but I haven't mentioned it in the podcast for a while, but I end every podcast with that slogan. It's go see shows, meet people, make stuff. And I feel like if you do those three things on a consistent basis, that's how you build your network, and that's how you find opportunities within the music industry. And it sounds like exactly what you did throughout your entire journey. You were meeting people, even though maybe, I don't know if you were like a content creator, but you're doing these panels and you're making stuff, you're making opportunities happen. So it's like a perfect story of how that slogan fits and how students can learn from that.
Yeah, and I was doing content in my own way because I was writing articles as a student that I was getting published, and so I got 2 articles published in the ABA Entertainment Forum publication, and I was writing for a school newspaper, and so I was creating content as well and meeting people.
That's awesome.
So
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, no, and it's a perfect, I mean, obviously now it's definitely difficult to be meeting people and when everything's just virtual,
Right.
but yeah, I do agree with your slogan. So
Awesome. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, go see shows, meet people, make stuff. Everyone that's listening. A question I had too is, especially in like the hip hop world, pop world, I see a lot of artists get into deals without talking to an attorney, and it's usually not the artists that are listening to podcasts like this, unfortunately. But
yeah.
one, I guess, what advice would you give to artists that, one, can't afford an attorney, and then 2, how do we find these artists that are getting into these bad deals? And I don't know if that's maybe a 2-part question, but like, yeah, how can we reach out to those artists that are about to sign a bad deal and not talking to an attorney because they can't afford them?
Yeah.
Or you
Well,
think they can afford them?
yeah, I think there's multiple reasons why sometimes artists starting out don't hire an attorney, and sometimes it's not cost is very often a factor, but sometimes either, maybe they think they can do it themselves, or they don't want to upset the other side by bringing in an attorney, or there's so many reasons. Sometimes they're afraid to work with an attorney because they've never done it before, so it seems intimidating. So there's all those reasons, and there's the cost reason as well. And the cost is an investment in your career. If that's a bad deal, probably either one of 2 things is going to happen. One, you're going to be stuck in a deal that's harmful to your career, that you're not happy in, and you're not going to be able to grow your career. So that is going to set you back time and actually will cost you more money that you could have been making had you been in a better deal in a better position. Secondly, if something goes wrong and you're in a dispute with whoever you're in a deal with, and that's like going into litigation territory or something, that is very, very expensive. So you're going to spend way more, or be in a position where you're stuck because you can't spend a couple $100,000 on litigation.
Right.
So then you just have to kind of like accept the bad treatment and wait it out. And in some cases, when deals go bad, maybe it's like you're not getting paid what you're supposed to get paid. So then you're losing more money again. So even though, maybe it'll cost you, maybe $1,000, a couple $1,000 up front, maybe not even that if it's a short agreement. It depends, if it's a 2-page agreement, that's not going to be as expensive as a 50-page agreement or something. So, so it's an upfront investment to understand what you're doing and what you're getting yourself into. 2, maybe prevent yourself from getting into something that you shouldn't be getting into. Or 3, still be able to enter into whatever agreement or relationship, but in a better position. Because that's what I do. Somebody comes to me with an agreement, so-and-so company wants to sign me. I read the agreement and I make changes to that agreement, and then go back and forth, have discussions with the company on, what they'll agree to, what we'll agree to, etc. But what I'm doing in that process is trying to make the contract better and more favorable to my client. So even if it's, sometimes a bad deal can be an okay deal then, or an okay deal can be a good deal, or, sometimes a bad deal can become a good deal. And it's a good, it's a good indication too, because you kind of get to see how the other side reacts to things and what they'll agree to and what they don't. And a lot of times during that process, I've advised clients based on that process, you don't want to work with these people. And in one instance, for example, they were really not pleasant people. And I told my client, I said, this is not going to be good for you, because nobody's going to want to work with you because you're associated with them, and it's going to be really difficult for you. And this person did not listen, went and signed the agreement anyway, called me 6 months later and said, can you get me out of it? And it's, again, I got her out of it, but it's much harder at that point to do that, because the company doesn't have to let you out. So, it really, it really is an investment, and it's really, really important to understand what you're signing. I mean, that at the end, I always tell my clients, at the end of the day is your career. So, you need to understand what this means for you, and what you're giving up and what you're getting.
Yeah, I love what you said earlier in the beginning of it. Kind of reminds me of this real estate quote. I don't remember exactly, but it's like, if you think you can't afford a good contractor, try hiring a cheap one or not hiring one at all. That's going to, at the end of the day, it's going to cost you way more. So
it is. Yeah.
Make the investment to hire an attorney. So it's so important. Time's goes racing by quickly. So let me jump into the pub deals.
Sure.
What is a publishing deal? So, basic question to start.
Sure. So a music publisher is, kind of an easy way to explain it is like the manager of the compositions. So in music, there's the musical composition, which is like the notes, the melody, all that stuff, lyrics. And then there's the recording of that composition. And the record labels are the ones that manage the recordings. And they market them and collect the royalties and pay the artist. So the publisher is the company that does that on the composition side. So they represent the compositions, they market them, they handle any contracts or licenses related to them. They collect all the royalties and then pay the songwriters their share of the royalties. So a publishing deal is the agreement that a songwriter is making with one of these publishing companies, and they come in a few different kind of standard formats. So there's like a songwriter agreement, which is basically the publisher will then own the full copyright of whatever songs are written during the agreement. And then usually the income is split 50-50 between the writer and the publishing company. Then there's something called a co-publishing agreement, where the copyright is split 50-50, the ownership. And then the royalties are actually split 75-25. So the songwriter gets 75% of the royalties and the music publisher keeps 25% of the royalties. Then there's something called an administration agreement, where the music publishing company doesn't own any of the copyright. They just act on behalf of those compositions. And then they take a percentage, which is usually anywhere between like 10 and 25% for the job that they're doing on behalf of the songwriter and those compositions. So those are kind of the general flavors of pub deal.
So starting with the first one, I guess the more exclusive deal where they take ownership of the composition. How does that typically work? I know the artist usually typically gets an advance. So I guess speak on that. Like, what could an artist expect for an advance? And then those royalties that you earned, do they directly go to the artist, or do they go towards the advance first? Like, how does the artist make more money after the advance, or in addition to the advance?
Yeah. So an advance is basically a loan. It's an advance payment of royalties. Although if you never recoup your advance, you usually don't have to pay that back. But
Mhm.
basically, as far as what to expect for an advance, it totally depends who you're signing with. It depends, how much traction you've got on your own, whether you're coming off another deal where you've had success, whether it's your first deal. There's a lot of factors that go into that. So we can't really say like, oh, expect this number.
Sure.
But basically, so I'll just make up a random number just for purposes of explanation. So let's say you get a $10,000 advance.
Mhm.
So that is paying you $10,000 of royalties in advance. So the publishing company then has to make back that $10,000 before they start paying you additional royalties that come in. So that process of where the company has to make back that money that they've already paid you, we call that recouping. So they have to recoup their advance. And it's the same kind of the same model on the record label side. The record label puts up a recording cost and pays for a bunch of stuff, and then they have to recoup those costs before they pay you royalties.
Now, I did a class on record deals this week, and record labels can have all kinds of deductions before you see your royalties. Is that the same for publishing companies? Do they have
not as bad.
deductions?
Yeah,
Not as
it's
bad?
not as bad on the publishing side. There are some deductions, but no, it's not as bad. And there's no like packaging or breakage or any of those things that should not be in record deals. So yeah, publishing deals not that they're, yes, they're, people can get into bad publishing deals as well, but publishing deals tend to be sort of a little more standardized, and I feel like I really like the publishing side of the business, and I feel like it's a friendlier place to be as well. So
And then funny breakage breakage on a digital distribution deal.
But there were people that were charging that.
I know.
They'll put it in there if they can. So.
That's ridiculous. And then let's say you get that advance, let's say it's $10,000 to continue that same number for the exercise. What does the artist have to deliver for that $10,000? And if they deliver one song and had co-writers on it, does that count as one song?
Yeah. So when we're talking about publishing, I always want to say the writer, because the writer and the artist aren't always the same person. Sure. But
thank you for that.
Again, depends on the deal. So, the deal might say you have to deliver 100% compositions, meaning like you fully wrote 10 compositions. But let's say you have a co-writer that you're working with and you only write a percentage of that, then it's whatever your percentage is counts towards that. So let's say you write a song that you have 50% on, then that counts as like half. So then you have to write 2 songs at 50% to count as one 100% song.
Got it. And then,
that makes sense.
Yep. And is there ever a scenario where I've heard stories of, and I won't name the artist, but of certain artists that even if they didn't write the song, they automatically get a percentage of the ownership. So let's say there's 2 songwriters, they write a song, so it's 50-50. Does it ever happen where that number can change when an artist like that comes on board? Yeah.
It does. Yeah. It depends who it is. Not all artists do that, but there are some artists that, if you want that artist to record your song, they get a percentage of it. And that's happened for a long time in the business. It's just usually not discussed in the public as much. So you just see that artist name on it and you think, oh, they wrote part of it too. But sometimes they actually didn't. They just get the percentage.
Got it. Other stories you hear too. I don't know. Kind of a tangent question, but is there a scenario where the person sitting in the corner that's part of the crew, I've heard sometimes gets a percentage of the song too, like 2%, 3%?
Sometimes. It depends. Again, totally depends on the people. There used to be, I've heard stories of, certain genres or, times in history where it's like, if you were in the room, you get a piece of it. But sometimes that can go bad as well. Like, this is why I talk about why a songwriter split agreement is so important, because there was one instance that I encountered, and I talk about this in the book, that there was a band that was in the studio recording their first album, and they were writing in the studio, and there were girlfriends and friends and the pizza guy and whoever. And one of the songs got really famous, and one of the girlfriends that was in the studio at the time was now an ex-girlfriend, and called the band and said, you said I could have 10% for writing such and such line. And the band said, no, we didn't. And she ended up hiring a lawyer, and the band ended up giving her 10% because it was cheaper and easier than fighting her in court over it, because there was no paperwork. And this is why I say, have an agreement, because they could have just produced that piece of paper and said, no, these are the people that wrote it. And if you would have written it, we were giving you that 10%, your name would be on here with your signature. So yeah, and these things happen all the time, really. Like, and not even with independent artists, they happen with, famous artists and songwriters as well, that, then I have to deal with kind of unraveling that and working it out. But, you asked before about having contracts reviewed when people maybe can't afford it, but there's also the other side about having contracts drafted, which, and I still advocate, spend the money, it's an investment, to have things drafted, so that way you have something like a songwriter split agreement that you can present. But I did see that there were a lot of people that were just foregoing contracts because they really just couldn't afford it. And so I started a website called indieartistresource.com, which has templates that I've drafted for the kind of most needed agreements for independent musicians. So songwriter split, producer, work for hire, management, a bunch of different ones. So that was, again, my way of trying to say, okay, well, there's this whole group of independent musicians that really, like, they're willing to hire an attorney. They just literally don't have the funds to do it. But they need help too. So I, it's still a template. And so it's not, won't cover every single, nuance necessarily, but I've drafted them based on the contracts that I draft in my practice. And so I know that they're good. And, so that is my way of providing another resource for independent musicians so they can have some protection.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for doing that for independent musicians out there. What's the website again?
indieartistresource.com.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And I can send you everything for show notes as well, if you want to include that.
That'd be amazing. Yeah. I'll, the one I see get passed around a lot online, and a lot of blogs post this one, is the song split agreement from Desmond Child. Super basic and super simple. So, I don't know if that's the best thing to use. So
yeah, I have not seen that one, so I can't comment on that. But they don't have to be super complicated. They can be, especially if one writer is administering on behalf of another or something like that. But then it gets more complicated. But otherwise, they can be done a little more simply, as long as they get the point across and they're clear.
So ideally, the song split agreement is done. I don't know if that's the most ideal, but I would assume you want to do a song split agreement before you start writing a song. That's probably the best time. But I know artists are creative beings, and having these uncomfortable conversations sometimes not something that they put on, like, start with in the beginning. What advice would you have for artists on when to complete that song split agreement?
Yeah, so I don't know about before, because since it hasn't been written, you don't know, maybe one person ends up writing more or something, but I definitely recommend at the session, or maybe like right after the session, because you want it to be fresh in everyone's mind. Because otherwise, if you let it go, then people change their mind, or they forget, or, and I'm sure it still happens, although it's like, in the 80s, like the story was always like, yeah, everybody was on drugs in the studio, so nobody actually remembers what happened. But, it's, I think a lot of people are more serious about it now, especially people that are listening to a show like this. But still, it's like, as time passes, like people's memories change, or they think about it and they go, but I wrote this part too. And so the best time to do it really is, again, like in the studio, at the session, or shortly thereafter. And yes, it can be awkward to bring it up, but if you're working with, other professionals and everybody's taking a professional attitude towards it, it's really that this is not only for the protection of the person that's bringing it up, it's for everybody's protection, everybody that worked on this song. So, so it shouldn't be seen as an adversarial thing. It should be something where everybody is then protected by what part that they wrote. And again, when you're doing it at the time, it's, it's fresh for everybody. So everybody can agree, like, yep, okay, you wrote this, I wrote this, that's about this percent. And some people have agreements that, probably the most famous example is Lennon and McCartney. I mean, some people that work together, they just agree, we'll split everything 50-50, or there's 4 people in a band, we'll split everything 4 ways. And so that is an option as well. But more and more, it's really been about who wrote what in the modern songwriting process. And then that also gets changed depending on if it's music that's using beats or different production or something, then often those people get percentages as well. So that sometimes changes things. But yeah, I would say, at the time is the time.
I like how you said, if you're a professional, you should do it right away, because professionals, that's how you will work as a professional. And it's much more awkward and uncomfortable if you have to get lawyers involved. So just do it right then and there. Going back to the the $10,000 for 10 songs scenario, right? When you first signed that deal, what does the publishing company do for the songwriter? Do they set up writing sessions with other writers? Like, how does that work, and how do you get in rooms with good writers?
Yeah, so it again depends on the company, who you're signing with, what your status is already. But yeah, I mean, if you're just starting out, they're gonna, whatever songs you have written already, they'll copyright those, they'll put them in their system, start making sure those are registered for everything. And they will set you up with co-writes. Hopefully they should be.
Right.
And they should be, also if you have compositions that are already completed, maybe, or if you are in these writing sessions, they should be trying to get those compositions recorded by artists. Or if you are a writer artist, then also trying to promote those for licensing, and get it out there. Because really, when those songs make money, they make money and you make money. So so they should be, people often don't like the word exploit, but that's what the word that we use is, to define getting it out there, making things happen, having them make money. So they should be exploiting those compositions, in whatever way they can to help, get them known and have them making money and gaining traction and all those good things. And and hopefully they're putting you in co-writing sessions, and then you're forming relationships that way.
How does an artist make sure they get the most out of their pub deal? Like, I've heard Chris Stapleton talk on Joe Rogan's podcast how he would literally be in 2 sessions a day, 5 days a week. So we do a 4-hour block in the morning, 4-hour block in the afternoon, And before he even released his first album, he said he had 10,000 songs to choose from, or at least 10,000 songs written already. Like, how does an artist get the most out of their pub deal?
Yeah, I would say really just be involved with the company. Don't just sit back and do nothing and expect the phone to ring. Because I mean, I think with anything, and especially for independent artists that are not signed yet, I mean, kind of get into that habit of you have to be making your own opportunities and doing things to make things happen. And so sort of same with when you do have a deal with a publishing company, be in contact with your A&R person and and form relationships with the people that work at the company so that they know that you're there. And some companies are very large and they may not, be able to focus on each individual person all the time. But when they know that you're there and you have a relationship with them, they're probably more likely to be setting things up for you because you're top of mind. And just and be involved and help make opportunities for yourself. I mean, we hear those stories about like, oh, someone was just randomly discovered or something. But most of the people that, really made it were people that worked really hard to make it.
Yeah.
So that doesn't change just because you get signed with a company. You've got to be a co-creator with your company.
And not every song that someone writes is a song that necessarily is going to get released, right? So when an artist is writing or a songwriter is writing for a publishing company, if they just are trying to just crank out and meet their 10-song requirement as quickly as possible so you get their next advance, that's probably not a good strategy, right? Is there ever a scenario, I guess, what's the when you finish a song and you think it's good, does that necessarily mean it gets applied towards those 10 songs, or is there also a possibility that the publishing company says, we don't think that's a good fit, keep writing or bring us something else?
It depends on the agreement and the company. So some companies will accept it as long as it's kind of like at the same quality of other songs that you've written, or if it's released, like if you also have a label deal or something and the label is willing to have that on the album, then the publisher will accept it. But sometimes, some publishers maybe will use more discretion of, we don't really think we can do much with this one. So, so it really just depends who you're working with.
Got it. And what kind of parameters should an artist or songwriters, I need to make sure I'm using the right word.
Okay. It's very common, and so many artists are writers as well. So,
right.
Yeah.
And that's ones I deal mostly with, their artists and their songwriters. But what type of parameters, I guess, should the songwriter aim for to get a co-pub deal? How do they know they're ready for a co-pub or ready to ask or to try to negotiate a co-pub instead of getting another advance for just a standard publishing deal?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it becomes about stature and bargaining power. And so if you've been doing well and getting success, then you'll be in a better position to have a co-pub instead of, a songwriter agreement. So, I mean, which is kind of the same with anything, the more success you have, the better position you're in, right? So
absolutely. There have been many artists that started out with publishing deals, like big artists, like Bruno Mars, Katy Perry, Chris Stapleton, and endless more. Is a pub deal a good, I guess, launch pad to getting a record deal?
It can be. Again, it kind of depends on your path, but I mean, maybe a label's not seeing you, maybe you don't have enough material developed, but maybe a publishing company really sees that you're a really good writer. And that that puts you in situations where you can co-write with other people, or you can write more songs and develop more on that side. And then those songs, you can then use those on your album when you can get noticed by a label. I mean, sometimes especially with like the major companies, they usually have publishing companies and record companies.
Right.
So there's more kind of interaction there as opposed to other companies where it's like just a publishing company or just a label. Not that one is better than the other, because they all have connections and do different things. But yeah, I mean, it can definitely be, I mean, then there's artists like LP, for example, who was writing for other artists for years and then finally stepped out, with her to perform her songs as well. So there's multiple roads to the same destination.
Yeah, LP is awesome. One of my last shows that before COVID was with LP. Such a great artist. Is there anything about pub deals that artists should know that maybe we didn't talk about? Songwriters should know.
Yeah, no, there. I mean, with any contract, there's so many nuances that really depend on a lot of factors. Like, are you just starting out? Do you have some stature already? Is it an independent company versus a major company? Things like that. So, I mean, I guess the most major things of contracts are, what are you giving up? What are you getting in return? Is this a company that's really going to be helping your career? Are the terms fair? Things like that. So, I mean, these are just, it's so specific to each deal and each person. So this is, if I was dealing with a specific agreement for a specific client, then I could give a more specific answer then I could say, well, I know my client has this goal and, this particular deal has this language and, I don't like that. And so it really, again, I mean, if we were talking about record deals, I would say more thing about like, make sure this isn't deducted or, that this is included or whatever. But like I said, publishing deals are a little more standardized when it comes to that sometimes. But I would still make sure that, the way the income is being split is standard and it's, and they're not deducting something that they shouldn't or that, I guess big thing with publishing deals is not double dipping. So you want to make sure that if they're also, in a, like representing you in another country, that they're not, taking two commissions or things like that. Because publishers usually, they have a network of sub-publishers in other countries, or sometimes if they're a larger company, they might have offices in different countries around the world. So you want to make sure that, like I said, they're not taking two commissions like on the way, things like that. So, but again, this is like the stuff that you want your lawyer to look for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one. So in my class, we spoke about record deals this week, as I mentioned, and it's funny because when you're giving, I guess, alarming people or just pointing out things to look out for in record deals, it can sound so doom and gloom, like record deals is the worst thing you can get yourself into. And I took a survey before the class, about 20 students, a small sample size if you're trying to use good statistics, but 100% of them said they didn't trust labels or were skeptical about labels. So I guess to add some positivity to the labels, if you have any, what from your perspective, what's the benefit of being on a major or indie label?
So the benefit of being on the label usually is that you have someone to put money behind you and you have someone to be marketing and promoting you in ways that you might not be able to do on your own. So, they have the connections with radio and independent promotion. They're able to take out big expensive ads or put you as an opener on some other artist tour, or things like that. So it's, somebody with the money and the connections to do for you what you can't maybe do for yourself. But that's really what the benefit of the label system is at this point. Back in the day, 50 years ago, you couldn't get famous without a label because they had all the power to be able to put you on the radio and promote you, and there was no internet and no real way to promote yourself as an independent artist. But now anybody can put their own music on the internet and get social media followers and things like that. So like I said, that's where the label comes in, is to, do things for you that you can't do for yourself at the level that you're at, usually because of financial means or connections and relationships.
Yeah, that's a good one. So just throw in like a couple of quick little fun rapid fire questions that I try to ask everyone. But what is the first concert that you've been to, or your first memorable concert?
The first concert that I ever went to was the Monkees.
Awesome.
I like older music, so so that was the first concert I ever went to.
Where was it? What venue?
That was at, I think it's now the Gibson Amphitheater. It was the Universal Amphitheater at the time, and so that was, it's very exciting. It's a big concert.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. What are the books, documentaries, or podcasts you recommend or share the most?
Lately it's been my book. I do recommend All You Need to Know About the Music Business as well, because that book it goes much more into artist teams and all the intricacies of record deals and stuff. So I mean, that is a good book to have as well. Podcasts, I mean, this is a good podcast. I don't like listen to a whole lot of music industry podcasts. Documentaries, I don't know, there's been some good ones, I think, on Netflix, but no particular one. I mean, they're more kind of like music based, not music industry based. Sometimes, I mean, I'm doing music industry all day long, so I don't always watch music industry stuff in the evening.
What about something not music industry related?
What did I watch? I don't even remember what I watched. I'm usually watching something with, I don't know, something social, or with self-improvement. I watched like a health thing about there's this thing now called the Pegan diet. So
Dr. Mark Hyman.
Think about that. So just different things, depends what I'm in the mood for.
What is something that you're currently really into that's not music related? Any kind of guilty pleasure? It could be a TV show, a new hobby, or something. So for example, I'm really into I have a 1-year-old now, and I'm really into learning how to cook healthy, delicious meals for a 1-year-old. So that's my current hobby.
That sounds good. I've been trying to do more juicing, and what else? My creative pursuits outside of law, since I'm not a musician, so my creativeness is painting and designing jewelry, so I do those things on the side as well.
Awesome. That's one.
My own creative enjoyment.
I love it. And what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Oh, it's a tough one. I think it's just, my mom instilled in me that just I could do whatever I set my mind to. If I believed that I could do it, I could do it. And so I think that was great advice to just, really kind of, I wanted to be a music lawyer, and I set my mind to do that, and I did it. And so I think for the artists listening, if you believe you can do it, you can do it. You got to put in the work to do it, but you can do it. And just, I think, recognizing opportunities, seeking out opportunities.
I love it. So before I ask you the last question, I ask everyone, just thanks so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. Yeah. Thanks for the book that you put out there for for students and for artists to learn from. The website that you put out, that's a great resource, and also for being a good example of, like, how I said, you really meet that slogan that I have: go see shows, meet people, make stuff. And I love just the journey you've had, like kind of really following your mom's advice and really putting in the hard work of doing all these, writing these articles, doing these panels, and just connecting with other lawyers. So thanks for setting a good example also that students that are listening to this or other people that want to be music and entertainment attorneys can follow. So thanks for what it is that you do.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And and then the question I ask everyone at the end is, what's your definition of making it?
I think, yeah, because everybody has a different definition of what that means to them. I think showing up every day, being able to do something that I love to do, and helping people and having a great time and a great life doing it.
Live the life you love.